There were two gentlemen standing at a train station waiting for a train. The younger man turned to the older gentleman and asked, "Excuse me, sir, do you know what time it is?" There was no response. So he waited a few minutes, and again he asked the young man to the older gentleman, "Do you know what time it is?" And the man again does not respond. So the young man turns to the older man and says, "Why won't you tell me what time it is?" The older man exhales, looks at the younger gentleman. "By answering you, we might even have a nice conversation. And if that goes well, you might even sit with me on the train. And we might talk and have a nice time. And over time, I might even invite you to my house for Shabbat dinner. And there at Shabbat, you might meet my daughter, and you two might connect. And you might even become engaged one day. And why would I want a son-in-law who can't even afford a watch?" Human behavior is so interesting. We yearn so much to be connected, and yet it scares us. You know, me, the Minnesotan who always has to say hi to the person in the elevator. It's a great way to scare New Yorkers. And yet we know that the words of Genesis said, "A man should not be alone." So deep inside we know we want to connect with people, and it's hard. One of our famous modern theologians, Martin Buber, teaches that the sacred connection between human beings is the divine spirit. So when we take the time to really connect with one another, not just a casual hi or a conversation, but a true connection, it becomes holy. And I think for many of us, we're aware of this, especially in a post-COVID-19 world. During COVID-19, many of us felt loneliness and despair. Some chronically deal with this challenge, while others face it situationally, be it illness, the loss of someone special in your life, divorce, a fight with a parent or a friend. There's different reasons why we face loneliness at times. And in many ways, it's an epidemic that is silent, that people hold in shame. So tonight, I want to share a little bit about me, not as Rabbi Jesse, but as Jesse Gallup. Because it is my hope to share some of the struggle with loneliness to take away some of that shame. See, I've been lucky. I grew up, lived a whole life in the Twin Cities, and then when I grew up, I moved to 9 different metro areas, moving every 2 or 3 years. It was great. It taught me how to face awkward situations, introduce myself to people, make friends. And that was really great skills. I was the associate rabbi at one of the largest congregations in Virginia, married a dear friend, and built a family. It all was so great on the outside. Then a few years ago, I moved to the Hudson Valley. And I followed a rabbi who had served for 30 years in a congregation that was dying. I didn't know it at the time I interviewed. It was right next to Curious Joel, which, if people know up there, it's ultra-Orthodox are taking over. And it was brutal. For the first time in my life, I second-guessed being a rabbi. Maybe I'm not made for New York. Maybe I'm not as talented as I thought I could be. So then I moved to Westchester. I was lucky enough to be hired to start a brand new day camp. This is where Temple Israel comes in. Starting a new business is a real challenge. It takes tenacity, hard work, disappointments. And by the time we were finally getting to be successful, COVID-19 came. With COVID-19, the New York Department of Health decided all day camps are to be closed. During the same time, I had been newly divorced. So there I was, a divorced dad, worried about being furloughed and losing my job, and not knowing another soul as a friend in New York besides my ex-husband. It was a really hard time. I remember driving in the car one day thinking, this is my rock bottom. But even at my hardest moment, I had two special lives. I have two children, Parker and Holden, and around that time they were 4 years old, and I knew they needed a dad, and they needed my love. And it was that sustaining connection that lifted me up to give me strength and energy to keep going forward. Why I share this is because I think many of us have faced moments of loneliness and struggle. For me, in the end, it became a blessing. I went to therapy, I rebuilt my life, I'm now happily married and everything is good, and I have two wonderful children and even a beautiful relationship with my ex-husband. And what this also taught me was how to be humble, and it got me ready to actually be your rabbi. It helped me to develop a new theology and to have a new understanding of life, that I didn't have all the answers, but I could be a partner on life's journey. And it was through this that it really inspired me to get back into the pulpit and share this life with you. So for me, theology, connection to God, was a really beautiful way of overcoming that loneliness. Many of us have overcome the loneliness and pain of COVID-19, but not everyone. Some of us still have scars and pains and hurt. And tonight, we need to recognize that. Look out into our community. Choose to sit next to somebody who you know is lonely. Really go and look and see who might feel invisible, even though we are around people. God said that we should not be alone. Our tradition says in Pirkei Avot, find yourself a teacher, make for yourself a friend. For us, our Jewish tradition teaches how to deal with loneliness. Faith. God is always there for us. There's the famous theology of the dark night of the soul, that in our most hardest times is kind of the time we find a higher power. And that love is always with us if we let it in. I know for some we struggle with this concept of the divine. But I love the story about walking on the beach where there was two sets of footprints. I know it's not a Jewish teaching, but I'll take it anyways. And all of a sudden, you look down the path and there's two sets of footprints. And at one point, there's only one set. And the person turns to God and says, God, why did you abandon me at my hardest hour? And God responded, I didn't abandon you. I carried you. There are times when we need God in our lives, when it's hard just to wake up, it's hard just to breathe. God is always there for us. In addition, we also need community. Talk to your neighbor. Say hello to the person at the checkout line. Get to know members in our community. Really take time. Go up to that acquaintance that you see, but you haven't talked to in a long time. We need these touching points. We need panim al panim, face-to-face interactions. Because when we look in somebody's eyes, we truly see their souls. We truly see that divine spark within them. Loneliness is inevitable. There's going to be a time in all our lives that we face it. It's what we do with these challenges. It's how we seek out help, and when we talk to a friend and be honest. Be it Facebook, be it TikTok, Instagram, you name it. Everybody's living the fabulous life. But we know the truth. That's why we're here. We come this day before God to own up our shortcomings. Our shortcomings is not being true to ourselves, not loving ourselves, not being humble enough to see that we're all struggling for meaning in this world. Because in that struggle is beauty and awe. In that way of living is what brings joy into our lives. So please tonight as you leave, please make sure to really introduce yourself to the people around you. Please make sure nobody goes home feeling alone. For we all deserve love, respect, and honor. Who knows, you may even make a friend on a train. Good Yom Tov.